You were conditioned to obey. Time to deprogram. Written and published by Stoic Guardian. Chapter 1. The Obedient Self. Where it all began. You weren't born obedient. You were born free. You came into the world with a voice, with instincts, with needs that demanded to be met. You cried when you were hungry. You screamed when you were uncomfortable. You reached, laughed, pushed, moved. You didn't yet know about shame or approval. You just were. Whole, honest, alive. But then it began. The shaping, the soft conditioning, the subtle cues. Maybe it was the way someone said, "Be quiet, you're too much." Or the way love only came when you behaved a certain way, or how good meant being agreeable, even if your body said otherwise. And little by little, you learned it's safer to be small, safer to be easy, safer to obey, not because you were weak, but because you were wise, because your nervous system understood what it took to be loved. And so you adapted, you obeyed, you survived. But what you didn't know then is that obedience would cost you your voice. It doesn't happen all at once. It's not some dramatic break. It's a quiet rewiring of your soul. You start to flinch when you feel too much. You hesitate before you speak. You apologize for your needs. You get praised for being polite when really your silence is just fear dressed up as good manners. And the scariest part? You forget there was ever another way. You forget that you had a say in your life, that you had a voice strong enough to shake rooms, a heart deep enough to set boundaries, a body wise enough to say no. And the more the world clapped for your obedience, the more disconnected you became from yourself. That's how the program works. It doesn't break you with violence. It softens you into compliance. So gently you don't even notice you're gone, but somewhere deep within, you're still there, watching, waiting, wanting to come home. Obedience was never about your nature. It was about your safety. That's what makes this work sacred, because to deprogram yourself isn't about blame or rebellion. It's about remembering who you were before they told you what to be, before they called your tears dramatic, your voice disrespectful, your needs inconvenient. Deprogramming is not a fight. It's a return. A return to the part of you that never stopped knowing, the part that whispers even now, "I don't want to perform anymore." And that whisper, it's your beginning, the first signal that you're ready to stop surviving and start living, because real living doesn't require you to be perfect, pleasing, or productive. It only asks that you be present, fully, unapologetically, gently. And presence begins the moment you stop obeying the old voices in your head and start listening to your own. So take a breath here. You're not late. You're not broken. You're not behind. You're just waking up. And wake-ups don't have to be loud. They can start right here with this choice. I will no longer leave myself just to stay accepted. That is the first deprogramming, not a battle cry, but a soft refusal, a sacred no. And that no, it will become your compass. It will guide you out of the cage. One truth at a time. One boundary at a time. One breath at a time. You are not here to obey. You are here to belong to yourself. And from that place, everything begins. I was not born to obey. I was born to remember. I return to my voice, my body, and my truth. I choose presence over performance, and that is enough. Chapter 2. Invisible Chains. How control masquerades as love. Some of the most confusing pain in life comes from the kind of love that doesn't feel like love, but claims to be. It comes wrapped in soft words, helpful advice, subtle correction. It says things like, "I'm doing this for your own good. You just don't understand." Or, "If you loved me, you'd..." And at first you believe it. Because how could something that's meant to care for you hurt so much? How could someone who says they love you also demand that you change who you are just to be safe with them? This is how control slips in unnoticed, not with shouting or violence, but with quiet conditions, with emotional contracts you never agreed to, with praise that only comes when you perform, and distance that arrives when you finally speak your truth. It doesn't scream. It doesn't slam doors. It just teaches you, if I want love, I have to be less. This is why it's so hard to name, because naming it means rewriting your whole idea of love. It means realizing that what you thought was protection may have been possession, that what you thought was discipline may have been control. And that's devastating. It's not just the relationship you grieve, it's the story. The belief that if you were just good enough, you'd finally feel safe, chosen, seen. But love that only arrives when you shrink isn't love. It's programming. And the sooner you see that, the sooner you stop blaming yourself for never being enough. Because you were enough. You always were. The love was just conditional. And that's not your failure. That's the system showing itself. The script passed down from generations that taught obedience is love and silence is peace. But now you know better. You know love isn't supposed to cost you yourself. You may still carry guilt. That's normal. You may still hear their voice in your head, questioning your truth. That's expected. Control doesn't just leave when you walk away, it lingers. It latches onto your sense of identity, your ability to trust your instincts. And the healing work? It's not about pretending it didn't happen. It's about learning how to feel again without asking for permission. About reconnecting with your yes, your no, your I'm not sure, and about letting love be earned by your nervous system, not forced through obligation. You begin to understand that real love, healthy love, doesn't tighten your chest or confuse your worth. It feels like breath. It feels like space. It feels like the opposite of walking on eggshells. And the more you feel that kind of love, the easier it is to recognize when control tries to wear its mask again. This chapter in your healing will be marked by subtle choices, saying no without explaining, leaving when the energy changes, stopping mid-conversation to ask yourself, do I feel safe right now? You'll disappoint people. You'll say things that once terrified you. You'll feel the guilt rise, but you'll stay with yourself anyway, because this time you're no longer choosing comfort at the cost of your clarity. This time you're choosing to see things as they are, not as you are trained to accept them. That's the heart of deprogramming. It's not just about waking up. It's about not going back to sleep. And once you see the chain, it's only a matter of time before you stop calling it jewelry, because freedom doesn't always announce itself with fireworks. Sometimes it whispers in your ear. You don't have to earn love by betraying yourself ever again. So breathe with this now. Let it settle. You are allowed to grieve what once felt like home, even if it was a cage. You are allowed to feel sad even as you free yourself. This isn't weakness. It's wisdom. The wisdom to name the pattern without shame. The wisdom to stop confusing pressure with love. The wisdom to walk away, not out of anger, but out of alignment. You are not disloyal for choosing peace. You are not ungrateful for choosing truth. You are not hard to love. You were just asked to prove it too many times. But now you know, love doesn't ask you to shrink. It invites you to expand, and when you give yourself that kind of love first, the whole world begins to shift. I release love that asks me to disappear. I am no longer confused by control disguised as care. I am worthy of a love that lets me be fully, freely, and finally myself. Chapter 3. Good Girl, Quiet Boy. Scripts you never chose. You were handed a script before you even learned your name. Not in words, but in rules, in glances, in what was praised, in what was punished. Good girls don't raise their voice. Quiet boys are strong. Smile more. Don't cry. Be nice. Be tough. Maybe no one said it directly. They didn't have to. It was written into the way they responded when you stepped out of line, when you danced too loudly, cried too freely, questioned too deeply, and you learned quickly that love came easier when you played your part, when you were polite, agreeable, predictable. And so you became the good girl, the quiet boy. You adjusted your tone. You swallowed your questions. You smiled when you were exhausted. And over time, the script became your second skin. You forgot it was a costume. You forgot you never agreed to the role. And now, it's time to take it off. The good child is often the most wounded, because goodness, as it was defined for you, didn't mean honesty. It meant obedience. It didn't mean joy. It meant compliance. And you became so good at meeting everyone else's expectations that you lost sight of your own. You forgot what you actually like, what you actually feel, what you actually want, because the script had no room for complexity, no room for contradiction, messiness, human. And now, years later, you still feel the pressure to be agreeable, even when it burns. You still say yes too fast. You still smile when someone crosses a line, not because you don't know the truth, but because the script kicks in before you can catch it. That's not your fault. That's programming. And it's okay to admit that it protected you, while also choosing to rewrite it. Unlearning the good girl or quiet boy doesn't mean becoming reckless. It means becoming real. It means telling the truth when your body says no. It means choosing boundaries over being liked. It means being okay with not being everyone's favorite, as long as you are no longer your own enemy. That's the shift. You begin to ask, what if being good has been keeping me small? What if being quiet has been cutting off my breath? What if the role they gave me was just a way to keep me easy to manage? And the more you question, the more you remember. You were not born to be digestible. You were born to be whole. Your feelings, your voice, your boundaries, they're not disruptions. They're the truth knocking on the door of your healing, so you begin to act differently. Gently at first. You say what you need without apology. You rest before you break. You leave conversations that require your silence to stay welcome, and the old script will try to pull you back. It'll say you're being selfish, dramatic, disrespectful. But now you know better. Now you know that good without authenticity is just people-pleasing in a costume. And you're done performing. You're ready to live, fully, freely, without asking for approval at every turn. And the world might take a moment to adjust. Let it. Let the people around you recalibrate to this version of you. The one who doesn't beg to belong. The one who writes her own lines. The one who speaks, moves, lives from within. So if no one ever told you this before, let me say it now. You were not born to be polite at the cost of your truth. You were not born to be quiet at the cost of your clarity. You were born to feel, to express, to be. And if your freedom disrupts the roles they gave you, good, let it. You don't owe anyone your disappearance to keep their comfort. You owe yourself your return. To your voice, to your rhythm, to the sacred complexity that lives beneath the surface. Rip up the script, write your own, and let this chapter of your life be the one where you stop performing good and start becoming true. I release the roles I never chose. I no longer perform for approval. I reclaim my voice, my rhythm, my truth, and I give myself permission to live outside the script. Chapter 4. When compliance becomes a coping mechanism. Compliance is quiet. It doesn't look like a wound, but it is. It's the subtle lowering of your voice, the automatic smile, the instinct to say yes even before your body agrees. It's how you learn to stay safe, not by fighting, but by fitting in. Somewhere along the way, your nervous system understood that being agreeable could keep you from being hurt. That if you didn't push back, didn't speak too loudly, didn't make things complicated, you could stay connected. And connection, even fragile or conditional, still felt safer than rejection. So you complied, not because you were weak, but because your body was wise. It chose the path of least resistance to survive. And that's something to honor, not shame. Because when no one taught you how to feel safe being yourself, obedience became your armor. You wore it like instinct, and you forgot it was even there. The danger of compliance is how invisible it becomes. People praise you for being easy, for being nice, for going with the flow. They don't see the part of you that disappears in every decision, the version of you that never gets to speak first, never chooses the restaurant, never says, "I don't like this." And over time, you lose the muscle of your own voice. You second-guess your preferences. You don't even know what you want anymore, because what you want was never part of the conversation. That's not personality. That's a trauma pattern. And the hardest part? It doesn't always show up in chaos. Sometimes it lives in your most normal moments. The way you over-explain, the way you say, "I'm fine," when you're not, the way you freeze when asked a simple question about your needs. That's not indecision. That's survival. Unlearning compliance begins with noticing your autopilot. That microsecond when someone asks for something and your mouth says yes before your body even has a chance to speak. That moment when you feel tension in your chest but override it with a smile. Begin there. Begin with the noticing, with the breath you take before the old habit takes over. Because healing isn't about flipping a switch. It's about lengthening the pause between reaction and truth. You start to stretch that space, to give yourself just enough time to ask, "Do I actually want this? Is this okay with me?" And even if you don't change your answer yet, you've already started the shift. Because that awareness is power. That awareness is presence. And presence is how you begin to choose instead of comply. This doesn't mean you become rude or inflexible. It means you become real. It means the yes you give is true. The smile you offer is authentic. The help you extend is whole. Because when your compliance fades, your integrity returns. You stop saying what keeps the peace and start saying what builds it, and people may notice. Some may resist it. You'll say, "I can't do that," and someone will look surprised. You'll say, "Actually, I'd rather not," and someone may call you difficult. But that's not your truth being wrong. That's your truth being new. And every time you honor it, you teach your nervous system that it's safe now, safe to pause, safe to speak, safe to stay connected to yourself, even when others don't like it. That's how compliance stops being your reflex and starts becoming your choice. So let today be the day you pause, just once, just long enough to ask, "Is this mine or is this a reflex?" Let that question anchor you. Let it slow you down. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be present. Your body remembers how to obey, but it's also learning how to belong. Belong not through silence, but through sovereignty, through clarity, through small, sacred acts of honesty. You are not selfish for checking in with yourself. You are not difficult for slowing down. You are not disloyal for telling the truth. You are simply healing, and the more you choose truth over reflex, presence over pleasing, peace over performance, the more your life begins to feel like yours. I do not exist to be agreeable, I exist to be aligned. I release the reflex to comply, and I choose presence, clarity, and truth instead. Chapter 5. The nervous system learns to flinch. There's a kind of tension that lives in the body so long, it starts to feel like home. You don't even notice it at first, it's just how your shoulders always feel. Tight. How your breath always moves, shallow. How your jaw settles, clenched. And the people around you might even say, "You're so calm." but they don't feel the tremble underneath, the way your heart speeds up when someone raises their voice, the way your body goes still when someone asks a question too directly, the way your smile appears automatically even when your chest is screaming no. This is what it means when your nervous system has learned to flinch, not in obvious ways, but in quiet, invisible ways that protected you for years. And if no one told you this before, let me say it now. The way your body responds is not broken. It's intelligent, and it kept you alive. Your body is not trying to ruin your life. It's trying to keep you safe. But what it learned as safety may no longer be true. It learned that stillness keeps the peace, that silence avoids conflict, that disappearing makes you lovable. And now, even when you're no longer in danger, your body doesn't know how to let go. It still flinches at raised voices, long silences, unexpected attention. And you wonder, why am I like this? But the answer isn't shame. It's memory. Your nervous system is not logical. It's primal. It learned through repetition, through what you felt, not what you understood. So when someone tells you to just relax, they're not speaking to the part of you that holds the fear. They're speaking to the surface. But your healing won't come from surface advice. It will come from deep listening. To the body that's been protecting you all along, the healing begins in the pause. In the breath you take when your body tenses. In the moment you notice the clench and soften anyway. Not because it's easy, but because you're choosing something different. You're telling your nervous system, you don't have to brace anymore. I'm safe now. That's not instant. That's not always graceful. Sometimes it looks like shaking, like crying, like sitting in a room alone and breathing through memories that don't make sense but feel real. This is nervous system healing. It's not about fixing. It's about reassuring, rebuilding trust with the parts of you that once had no choice but to hide. And as you breathe, stretch, move gently, your body starts to believe you. Slowly, quietly, moment by moment. You are not forcing calm. You are teaching safety. There is no one-size-fits-all process for this work. Sometimes healing will look like journaling. Other times it will look like canceling plans, going for a walk, or putting your hand over your chest and whispering, "You're okay now." And every time you do that, you're giving your nervous system something new, evidence. Evidence that the threat has passed, that the world is different now, that your voice is allowed, that your no won't be punished, that your needs won't be ridiculed. And slowly the flinch fades. It doesn't disappear all at once, but it softens. You find yourself standing a little taller, breathing a little deeper, answering questions without panic, setting boundaries without shaking. That's not weakness leaving, that's safety arriving. And it doesn't need to be loud, it just needs to be real. So today, don't rush it. Don't demand stillness, just listen. Listen to what your body's been trying to say for years. I was scared, I was trying to protect you. I didn't know we were safe now. And meet that voice with grace. Meet it with patience, with slow breaths and steady presence. You don't need to fix your flinch, you just need to befriend it. Let it lead you to the places where healing is still needed. Let it show you where safety hasn't fully landed yet, and remind yourself again and again if needed, I am safe to feel. I am safe to stay. I am safe to soften. That's not weakness, that's rewiring. And with every breath you take in presence, your nervous system learns a new truth. I don't have to flinch to survive anymore. I get to stay. I get to breathe. I get to be. I listen to my body with compassion. I do not rush my healing. I breathe safety into the spaces where fear once lived, and I soften slowly into trust. Chapter 6. Waking up inside the program, there's a moment in healing that feels like standing in a room you've lived in your whole life and realizing for the first time that the walls aren't yours, that the furniture was never chosen by you, that the patterns on the wallpaper tell someone else's story. And suddenly, things don't feel right anymore. You don't recognize the way you speak to yourself, the way you say yes too quickly, the way you smile when something hurts, the way you work twice as hard to feel half as worthy. It's jarring, not because anything new has happened, but because you're finally seeing it. This is what it feels like to wake up inside the program, the conditioning, the emotional automation that's shaped your identity for years. It's like your soul turns the lights on, and everything looks unfamiliar, even though it's all been there all along. Waking up doesn't mean everything makes sense. It means you start asking questions. Why do I need people to like me to feel safe? Why do I apologize for everything? Why do I feel guilt when I rest? These aren't small questions. These are sacred disruptions. Interruptions in the patterns that once kept you compliant, and the answers don't come right away. They don't arrive in neat little phrases, but the questions themselves are medicine, because every time you ask one, you break the spell a little more. You remind yourself, I wasn't born thinking this way, I was taught. Taught to shrink, taught to submit, taught to survive by making myself palatable. And now, you're waking up. Not in anger, but in clarity. Not with fire, but with light. And that light might be dim at first, but it's enough. Enough to begin seeing what was always waiting to be seen. There's grief in waking up. Grief for the years you lived half asleep, for the love you accepted with conditions, for the boundaries you didn't know how to set, for the pain you normalized just to feel accepted. But grief is not regression, it's recognition. It means you're present now. It means your soul is reclaiming space. You start to notice the patterns not as flaws, but as codes. Codes written by your upbringing, your culture, your truths designed to keep you obedient, easy, unshaken. And as you wake up, you start to see those codes running in real time. You catch yourself in the middle of people-pleasing. You feel the hesitation before you say no. You notice the impulse to explain your feelings. And in those moments, something powerful happens. You pause. You don't judge. You don't panic. You pause. Because now you see the program. And that means you can begin to change it. This isn't about becoming someone else. It's about remembering who you were before the program rewrote you. Before the fear. Before the self-doubt. Before the guilt that trained you to feel responsible for everyone else's emotions. The real you is not buried. She's just been bypassed, covered up by survival mechanisms, and now each breath, each boundary, each quiet refusal is a key. A way back to yourself. It's not glamorous, it's not always comfortable, but it's honest. And honesty is what melts the old code. You don't need to force a revolution, you just need to stay awake. Even when it's inconvenient, even when it's messy, even when part of you longs for the comfort of the old patterns, because waking up hurts, but going back would hurt more. You've come too far to pretend you can't see anymore, so let this be your reminder. You are not crazy, you are not dramatic, you are aware. And awareness is power. It's what shifts your decisions, it's what rewires your reactions, it's what brings you back, again and again, to your center. You don't have to deconstruct everything today. You don't have to rewrite the whole story in one breath. Just stay awake to the moments when you flinch, to the moments when you disappear, to the moments when the program whispers, be nice, not honest, and choose softly, slowly, bravely to stay present instead. You are not who the program told you to be. You are who you've always been beneath the programming. And now, you remember. I am awake. I see the patterns clearly. I no longer live on autopilot. I walk forward, present and powerful, choosing myself, moment by moment. Chapter 7. What you feel is not wrong. It's real. There's a moment in healing that feels like your entire body finally exhaling, not because everything is fixed, but because you realize you were never crazy. Not for feeling too much, not for reacting, not for shutting down when no one noticed the pressure you were under. The world often tells sensitive people that their pain is exaggeration, that their discomfort is drama, that their truth needs proof. But let me tell you this, what you feel is not wrong. It's real. Every time you've hesitated to speak because you didn't want to be seen as difficult, every time you cried and then apologized for crying, every time your gut said no but your mouth said yes, you were feeling something real. And just because someone else didn't see it doesn't mean it didn't exist. Your emotions are not problems to solve, they are messengers. And they've been speaking on your behalf all along. You've been conditioned to mistrust your emotional self, to believe that logic matters more than intuition, that facts override felt experience, that if no one else agrees with your pain you must be overreacting. But healing requires a reversal of that lens. It asks you to believe yourself again, to listen to the wisdom in your anxiety, to sit with the message in your anger, to let your sadness be seen, not solved. You don't need to justify your feelings with a spreadsheet of reasons. You just need to feel them fully, without muting them to make others more comfortable, because the discomfort isn't a flaw, it's feedback. Your emotions don't need to be fixed, they need to be felt. And the more you listen without judgment, the more they soften into clarity, into calm, into truth. The trouble is, when you grow up in systems that minimize or invalidate your emotions, you start to invalidate yourself. You learn to gaslight your own body. You say things like, "It wasn't that bad. Maybe I'm being too sensitive. I should just get over it." And with every internal dismissal, your relationship with your emotional truth erodes. But you can rebuild it, gently, with small acts of emotional honesty. You start by noticing, what am I feeling right now, even if it's inconvenient? You give that feeling a name, you give it a place, you breathe with it. You say, this sadness is mine, this anger is mine, this disappointment is mine, and it belongs here with me. Not forever, but for now, for long enough to feel respected. Because when your feelings feel seen, they no longer need to shout, they just need to exist. And yes, your feelings might overwhelm others. Some people might pull away when you stop minimizing yourself. That's okay, let them. You are no longer responsible for shrinking to stay emotionally convenient. You are responsible for staying emotionally connected to yourself, and in doing so, you give others permission to do the same. You model what emotional maturity looks like. Not perfection, but presence. Not control, but compassion. You stop performing peace and start building it from within, and the more often you show up for your feelings without fear, the more you reclaim the safety that was once lost. Not because someone else finally validates you, but because you do. You believe your body, you trust your tears, you hear your truth. And from that place, healing becomes not just possible, but natural. So today, let it be enough to say, I feel this. And that's okay, even if you don't understand it yet, even if no one else agrees. Let your body tell the truth it's held onto for years. Let your feelings rise like waves, and meet them with breath, not resistance. You were not wrong to feel what you felt. You were human. You are human. And your emotions aren't obstacles, they're guides. Guides that lead you home, not to perfection, but to presence. And as you walk this path back to yourself, remind every part of you. I no longer need to be logical to be valid. I no longer need to be understood to be real. What I feel is not wrong, it's sacred, and it's mine to honor. I trust what I feel. I no longer doubt my emotions. I honor my inner truth with softness, with breath, and with steady self-compassion. Chapter 8. Guilt is the guardian of the system. Guilt is clever. It doesn't scream like shame or push like fear. It whispers. It tiptoes. It shows up as a lump in your throat after setting a boundary, a heaviness in your chest when you rest instead of perform, a quiet inner voice that asks, who do you think you are? To want this, to say that, to walk away. Guilt doesn't always come from doing something wrong. Often, it comes from doing something different, from breaking rules you never agreed to but followed for survival. Guilt is not always a moral signal. It's a conditioning reflex. It shows up to keep you small, to keep you obedient, to keep the system you were trained in intact. Because when you begin to deprogram, when you say no without apology, when you choose yourself without shame, the system loses power, and guilt rushes in to pull you back. But you're not going back. You were taught that guilt means you've harmed someone, but more often in healing, guilt means you've finally honored yourself. The guilt you feel when you don't answer that text right away, the guilt when you cancel plans, the guilt when you ask for help. It's not because you've done something wrong. It's because you've done something new, something your nervous system doesn't yet recognize as safe. You are not guilty. You are growing. And guilt is trying to keep you in the old version of yourself, the agreeable one, the available one, the easy one. But you're not here to be easy. You're here to be honest. And that honesty may disappoint others, but it will finally begin to restore you. You don't need to feel good about growth for it to be real. You just need to keep going. The system that taught you to prioritize others over yourself didn't disappear when you left the room. It lives in your habits, your breath, your silence. It's internalized. That's why guilt feels so heavy, because you think it's yours. But what if it's not? What if guilt is just the echo of someone else's expectations? A leftover voice from a childhood where love was earned, not given. A voice that said, if you make them uncomfortable, they'll leave. And now, even though you're safe, that voice still lingers. But here's what healing sounds like. Thank you, guilt, for trying to protect me, but I'm not going to obey you today. That sentence alone can create space to breathe, space to choose differently, space to feel what's true, not what's programmed, because guilt is not the guide, your body is. And your body knows when something is real, even if it's unfamiliar. This is the moment where you start to ask new questions. Is this guilt coming from truth or from training? Is it guiding me back to alignment or back to obedience? And when the answer is training, you choose differently. You hold the guilt gently, like a scared child who doesn't know things have changed. You don't shame it, you soothe it. You breathe with it, and then you move forward anyway. That's what freedom feels like, not the absence of guilt, but the courage to move through it. You'll still feel it, you'll still hear it, but now you'll recognize it for what it is, the system's last line of defense, the guardian at the door of your truth. And when you pass through that door, something sacred happens. Your life begins. Not the one you were trained to tolerate, the one you were born to live. So today, when guilt rises, don't panic. Don't retreat, just pause. Ask, is this guilt or is this growth? And breathe. Let the breath remind your body, we are safe now. We don't have to obey fear, we get to choose what's real. You are not wrong for choosing yourself. You are not bad for taking up space. You are not selfish for needing rest, peace, or distance. You are simply no longer willing to betray yourself for the comfort of others. And that's not cruelty. That's clarity. Guilt may still knock, but it no longer holds the keys. You do. And with every step you take in truth, You teach the system it no longer owns you. You're free now. Stay free. Guilt is not my compass. My truth is. I release the need to earn peace through obedience. I choose myself with compassion, and that is more than enough. Chapter 9. The body remembers what the mind forgot. There are things your mind can forget, things it can explain away. It'll say, that wasn't so bad. That's just how things were. I've moved on. But the body doesn't forget. The body keeps score. It remembers what was never named. It carries what was never validated. And long after your mind stops thinking about it, your body still feels it. In the tightness in your chest, the sudden shutdown when someone raises their voice, the tears you can't explain, the tension you carry in silence, the exhaustion after a normal conversation, your body knows. It always has. It remembers what was unsafe, what felt too much, what made you small to survive. And that remembering? It's not weakness, it's wisdom. The body stores what the mind couldn't process because you didn't have the language or the support or the permission to feel it all. But now you do. And that's where the healing begins. Your body is not dramatic. It's not malfunctioning. It's not irrational. It's honest. It speaks in sensations, not sentences. It doesn't care about timelines. It only knows what feels safe and what doesn't. That's why triggers don't always make sense. Why you flinch at the tone, even if the words are kind. Why you freeze when asked a simple question. Why you suddenly go numb when others want you to open up. These aren't random responses. They are messages. Messages from the part of you that has carried unspoken pain for years. Not to sabotage you, but to signal you. To say, there's still something here. Something tender. Something sacred. Please come back for me. And coming back doesn't mean reliving the pain. It means giving your body what it never had back then, your presence. The body is not asking for punishment. It's asking to be heard, to be felt, to be welcomed without rushing it to heal. You don't need to fix your body's memory. You need to stay with it. When it shakes, stay. When it closes, stay. When it aches, stay. That staying is the medicine. Because every time you stay, you build trust. You teach your body, you don't have to scream anymore. I'm listening now. And slowly, the responses begin to shift. The tightness eases, the flinch softens, the fatigue lifts. Not because the past disappears, but because the present becomes a safe place again. That's how healing feels. Not like erasing, but reclaiming. Not like moving on, but moving inward. You don't have to rush it. You don't have to perform wellness. You just have to be willing to feel. This is the part of healing that can't be intellectualized. You can't logic your way into safety. You have to live into it. Through breath, through movement, through stillness. Through the quiet decision to put your hand on your heart and whisper, I'm with you. Some days that will be enough. Other days the old responses will rise again. That's not failure. That's the body checking, is it really safe now? And your answer is not force, it's compassion. You say, yes, I hear you. Yes, it was real. Yes, I'm here now. You are not overreacting, you are remembering. And that remembering is not a setback. It's a sign that your body trusts you enough to finally show you what it's been holding. So today, pause. Tune in. Ask your body, what do you need right now? And listen, not with judgment, but with reverence. Your body is not your enemy, it's your ally, your witness, your home. It held your story when no one else could, and now, as you begin to come home to yourself, it will guide you not just to what hurts, but to what heals. And that healing won't be linear, but it will be real, because the body never lies. It only waits, and when you finally say, I'm here, and I believe you. Something ancient inside you exhales. You are not broken. You are remembering, and in that remembering you are finally, gently, coming back to life. My body is wise. I honor its memory. I no longer rush or override it. I stay, I listen, and I heal with breath, presence, and trust. Chapter 10. Shame was never yours to carry. Shame isn't loud. It doesn't need to be. It speaks in silence. In the way your body tenses when you are asked a personal question. In the way you lower your eyes when someone compliments you. In the way you disappear just a little every time you make a mistake. Shame is quiet, but it's heavy. It burrows deep, and it doesn't always tell you it's there. Instead, it disguises itself as, I'm not good enough. I should have known better. Why do I always ruin things? And before you even realize it, shame becomes your filter. Every memory, every interaction, every choice passes through it, and worst of all, most of the shame you carry isn't even yours. It was handed to you, implied, projected, inherited, and you were too young to know the difference, too tender to reject it. So you accepted it, quietly, unconsciously, as part of your identity. Shame often begins when you are punished for simply being yourself, for having emotions, for needing rest, for not fitting in, for wanting more. You were told, directly or indirectly, that your truth made others uncomfortable, that your pain was a burden, that your voice was too loud, and from that you learned, maybe it's me. That's what shame does. It turns your humanity into a flaw. It makes you question what should have always been safe, your feelings, your body, your desires, your truth. And what's most cruel about shame is that it isolates you. It convinces you that no one else feels this way, that if people really saw you, they'd walk away. But the truth is this: shame thrives in secrecy and begins to die in presence. It loses its grip the moment you stop hiding and say, "This hurts, and I'm still worthy." You are not broken for carrying shame. You were never meant to carry it at all. It was placed on you by people who couldn't hold their own, by systems that used shame to control, by experiences that made you feel small just to keep you compliant. And now? Now you get to put it down. Not all at once, maybe just one piece today. One story you stop blaming yourself for. One memory you look at with compassion instead of criticism. That's how it starts. Shame loses power, not when you fight it, but when you witness it. When you say, I see you, I know where you came from, and I no longer believe you define me, because you are not your worst moment. You are not your trauma. You are not the things someone else projected onto you. You are the one who survived those things, and that survival is sacred. The body carries shame too, in the way it curls in the way it avoids eye contact, in the way it shrinks before speaking. That's not just insecurity. That's history. A history of being made to feel too much, too needy, too complicated. And the remedy? It's not perfection. It's not doing better. It's presence. It's sitting with yourself and saying, there was never anything wrong with me. I just believed people who didn't know how to love me right. You start to move differently, speak differently, breathe differently, not because you're confident now, but because you're finally freeing yourself from the invisible weight. And that freedom, it's quiet, gentle, sometimes even sad, because it means saying goodbye to a story you lived in for years, a story that said love must be earned, worth must be proved, and safety depends on staying small. That story ends here. So take this moment now, not to fight shame, but to forgive yourself for ever believing it belonged to you. Say it softly, say it slowly, say it until something inside starts to believe you. I am not wrong. I am not bad. I am not too much. I was just never meant to carry this shame. And as you release it, one breath, one memory, one truth at a time, your body will remember what it means to live without flinching. Your voice will remember what it means to speak without trembling. And your soul, it will finally feel what it's been aching for all along. Wholeness. You were never broken, you were just burdened. And now, you are learning to be free. I release the shame that was never mine. I forgive the versions of me that believed I had to earn love. I am whole, worthy, and free, without apology. Chapter 11. The Quiet Rebellion of Saying No. There's power in no. Not the sharp, defensive no that rises from panic, but the grounded, gentle one that rises from truth. A soft, sacred no. A full-body no. A no that doesn't need to explain itself. For many, saying no feels like a rebellion, because it is. Not a rebellion against others, but against the system inside you that was built on compliance. That voice inside that says, be nice, don't upset them, just say yes. It's easier. But easier for who? And at what cost? Every time you say yes to something that empties you, you are saying no to something that could nourish you. And eventually, your soul starts to notice. Your body starts to break. Your spirit starts to whisper, there has to be another way. And there is. It begins with no. You were taught to associate no with guilt, with danger, with rejection. Saying no meant you were selfish, difficult, disrespectful. So you softened your boundaries into suggestions. You turned your no into maybe. You over-explained, over-apologized, overextended. And in the process, you forgot that your no is your right. It's not an attack. It's not a punishment. It's a form of self-respect. And the truth is, not everyone will honor it. That's okay. You're not here to be universally approved of. You're here to be authentic. And authenticity requires boundaries. It requires the ability to pause, breathe, check in with your body, and respond with what's real, not what's easy, not what's polite, what's true. And sometimes, the truth is simply no. No, the quiet rebellion of saying no doesn't always feel empowering at first. Sometimes it feels terrifying. You'll feel the urge to backpedal, to soften, to explain yourself into exhaustion. But that's not your truth speaking, that's your training. And the only way to unlearn it is to practice. One small no at a time. No to the extra shift you didn't have energy for. No to the conversation that drains you. No to the story that says you're only worthy when you're available. These aren't acts of rejection. They are acts of return. Every no is a return to your peace, a return to your energy, a return to your voice. And the more you practice, the less guilt shows up. Or maybe it still shows up, but it no longer controls you. That's what healing looks like. Not perfection, but power reclaimed. You'll notice something else begin to shift. The world around you adjusts. Some people pull back. Some question you, but others, they rise to meet your truth. They respect your no. They don't need you to shrink to stay close. These are your people. The ones who honor your boundaries, not because you demanded it, but because your clarity teaches them how to love you better. Your no becomes a lighthouse, a way to signal your standard without shouting, a way to invite people into deeper trust. Because when your yes is real, because your no is allowed, your relationships transform. They become cleaner, softer, safer, not because you control them, but because you finally honor yourself inside them. So today, let this be enough. One clear, kind, honest no. No to rushing, no to people-pleasing, no to the habit of abandoning yourself to be accepted. And notice how your body responds, not with ease, at first, but with a quiet kind of strength, a remembering, a soft reclaiming of your time, your energy, your space. Saying no is not about rejection, it's about alignment. And every time you honor your no, you remind yourself, I do not exist to be agreeable. I exist to be alive, fully, truthfully. And if that truth requires fewer yeses and more boundaries, so be it. That is your quiet rebellion. That is your healing in motion. That is your return to you. My no is sacred. I no longer betray myself for comfort or approval. I say no with love, with clarity, and with full permission to protect my peace. Chapter 12. How to hear your voice again. There's a silence that isn't peace. It's the silence of disconnection, of being so conditioned to listen to others, you forget how to listen to yourself. You lose the sound of your own voice, not because it's gone, but because it's been drowned. Drowned by people's opinions, by fear, by the system that told you who you had to be, and after a while, that silence becomes normal, comfortable even. Safer to echo than to speak, safer to agree than to admit you don't, safer to be what's expected than what's real, but inside you, under the habits, under the apologies, under the exhaustion, your voice is still there, waiting, not for the perfect moment, just for the quiet one, the one where you finally ask, what do I think? What do I want? What do I feel? That question isn't small, it's the first key back home. At first, your voice might not sound confident. It might be shaky, unsure, faint. That's okay. That doesn't mean it's wrong. It means it's honest. You are learning how to trust yourself again after years of outsourcing your truth. You are learning to feel the difference between intuition and fear, between desire and programming. And that learning? It happens through softness, not force. You begin by listening, not to be right, but to be real. You journal. You pause before saying yes. You notice what makes your body open and what makes it contract. You catch yourself mid-thought and say, wait, do I believe this, or was I taught to believe it? And in that pause, your voice becomes clearer. It begins to rise, not as performance, but as presence, as knowing, as you. This isn't about becoming loud, it's about becoming true. Your voice doesn't need to roar to be valid. It just needs to be yours. And as you practice listening, your tone shifts. You no longer speak from defense, you speak from depth. You don't overshare to feel worthy. You speak clearly because you know what you mean. That's the gift of reconnecting with your voice. It's not about being heard by everyone, it's about being heard by you. And once you trust that, the pressure dissolves. You no longer feel the need to prove or convince. You begin to choose silence, not out of fear, but out of choice. You begin to speak not for approval, but for alignment. And in every word, every pause, every no, your voice becomes less of a tool and more of a truth. You'll notice that some people won't like this version of you, the one who speaks from knowing, the one who no longer asks for permission to exist. Let them misunderstand. You are not here to be palatable. You are here to be authentic. And authentic voices don't always sound sweet. Sometimes they tremble. Sometimes they disagree. Sometimes they simply say, that doesn't work for me. And that kind of voice, that's the one you were trained to ignore. But now, you're listening. You're respecting the inner sound that was silenced for too long, and every time you choose that voice over the noise, every time you follow your own guidance instead of someone else's rules, you reclaim something you never truly lost, yourself. So today, create the space to hear your voice again, not in response to others, just for you. Sit in silence, breathe, ask, what do I know to be true right now? And trust what rises, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it challenges everything you were taught, even if it's only a whisper. That whisper, it's sacred, it's yours, and it holds everything you've been waiting for, your clarity, your compass, your return. You don't need to speak loudly, You just need to speak honestly, because when your voice is rooted in truth, it doesn't matter how long it was silent. The moment it returns, the world begins to change. My voice is not lost, it is rising. I no longer silence my truth to be accepted. I speak with presence, with purpose, and with full permission to be myself. Chapter 13. Freedom isn't loud. It's grounded. There's a myth about freedom, that it's wild, that it's loud, that it looks like walking away dramatically, raising your voice, burning bridges. But real freedom, it rarely looks like that. Real freedom is quiet. It's grounded. It's the calm you feel when you say no and don't need to explain. It's the stillness in your chest after you choose rest without guilt. It's the peace that comes when you no longer need to be liked to feel worthy. Real freedom doesn't require an audience. It doesn't seek applause. It doesn't perform. It settles. It softens, and it roots you deeper into yourself than fear ever could. Because freedom isn't about doing whatever you want, it's about no longer abandoning yourself. It's not chaos, it's clarity. And when you feel that for the first time, not the idea of freedom, but the felt sense of it, you understand why. It doesn't need to be loud, it already speaks. Grounded freedom feels like breathing fully again, like not flinching when someone disagrees, like trusting your body to guide your yes and your no. It doesn't demand, it doesn't convince, it just is. You walk into a room and no longer scan for approval. You speak and no longer need to be perfect. You listen to others, not to perform empathy, but because your presence is no longer performative. It's real. This kind of freedom comes from practice. From days when your body wanted to obey but you paused instead. From nights when guilt tried to rise but you breathed through it. From the sacred decision to choose alignment over acceptance, even when it was uncomfortable. Freedom is not about escape. It's about return. And you're not returning to an ideal. You're returning to your center. That center is not fragile. It doesn't need to be defended. When you're grounded in yourself, you no longer swing from validation to rejection. You no longer lose yourself in someone else's energy. You stop being a sponge for everyone's emotions, because your center becomes your home. And from that home, you live differently. You move with a steady kind of strength. The kind that doesn't need to be right to stay rooted. You let others be who they are, and you stay who you are. That's real freedom, not needing to control what's outside, because you trust what's inside. And yes, some people might say, you've changed. Let them. Growth often looks like distance to those who were only close to your patterns. But grounded freedom doesn't retaliate. It simply releases. You let go, with love, without guilt, without noise. Freedom also looks like boundaries, like silence, like choosing not to engage, like no longer chasing closure. Not because you've given up, but because you've given yourself back to you. That kind of freedom can feel lonely at first, but soon it starts to feel like peace, like presence. Like the kind of quiet that doesn't demand more from you, but gives more to you. It feeds you. It strengthens you. It lets you be soft without being scared, and in that softness you begin to understand. Freedom isn't the absence of responsibility, it's the absence of self-abandonment. You're still accountable, still showing up, but now you do it from choice, not compulsion. You no longer prove your goodness, you embody it. And that embodiment, it doesn't shout, it simply stays. So today, sit with this. Freedom doesn't need to be earned. It needs to be remembered. You don't have to force it. You don't have to fight for it. You just have to stay. Stay with your no. Stay with your breath. Stay with your center when the world tries to pull you back into noise, because your peace is not passive, it's power. And every time you choose presence over panic, clarity over chaos, alignment over approval, you're not just healing, you're freeing yourself. Gently, fully, quietly. And that quiet, that's what real freedom sounds like. My freedom is not performance, it is presence. I am rooted in myself. I move from clarity, not chaos, and I choose peace again and again, without apology. Chapter 14. Building a life based on self-trust. Healing doesn't stop with knowing what hurt you. It deepens when you decide what you'll build from here. And the foundation? It's not someone else's approval, not a checklist of accomplishments, not a blueprint handed to you by culture or conditioning. The foundation is self-trust. It's choosing to believe your own voice, even when it contradicts the noise. It's listening to your body's yes, even when others frown. It's slowing down to ask, is this what I want, or just what I was told to want? And for many of us, that's the hardest part. Because we weren't taught how to trust ourselves. We were taught how to obey, how to perform, how to mold our lives into something acceptable. And now, as that programming dissolves, the question becomes, what does a life built on trust look like? Not in theory, but in practice. It begins in small ways. You wake up and notice what your body feels, not what your calendar says. You stop eating things that numb you. You stop saying yes to be polite. You begin to live in a rhythm that honors your inner world, not just your outer obligations. That might mean fewer social events, more solitude, more nature, more breath, more checking in. Self-trust doesn't always look impressive on the outside, but it feels stable on the inside. You no longer outsource your decisions. You no longer need 10 people to confirm your intuition. You hear the subtle signal in your gut and say, that's enough. And yes, sometimes you'll get it wrong. That's okay. Self-trust is not perfection. It's knowing you'll return to yourself, no matter what. It's knowing that when life gets loud, you'll pause, not panic. You begin to rebuild your life around what sustains you, not what impresses. You stop overpromising and underresting. You stop performing energy you don't have. You start creating days that feel like yours. And that might require saying no more often, disappointing people, canceling without guilt. It might mean walking away from roles where you were celebrated for betraying yourself. But what you gain in return? Space, clarity, the chance to finally feel safe in your own presence. You realize, I don't need to be perfect to be trusted. I just need to be consistent with myself. That consistency becomes your compass. You check in before every decision, not with others, with you. And the more you do that, the more your life starts to align, not with what looks good, but with what feels right. Self-trust also teaches you how to fail. Gently, without spiraling. You'll make a choice that doesn't go as planned, and instead of shame, you'll feel softness. You'll say, I hear you, that was hard, let's try again. And that relationship with yourself is everything. Because now your mistakes aren't reasons to abandon yourself, they're reasons to stay. You don't panic when things go wrong. You don't collapse when someone disapproves, because your self-trust is stronger than their reaction. That doesn't make you invincible, it makes you intact. It makes your life feel stable, not because it's perfect, but because you know you'll return to yourself again and again, through every decision, every fall, every step forward. That's the new architecture. That's the life you're building now. One grounded in truth, clarity, and compassion. So today, ask yourself softly, what does a life built on self-trust look like for me? What does it sound like in my voice? What does it feel like in my body? Start there. Not with grand declarations, but with gentle actions. Trust yourself enough to rest, to pause, to start over, to say yes only when you mean it, and no when your body says so. Trust that your timing is holy, that your rhythm is real, that your intuition isn't a luxury, It's your language. And when you begin to live from that language, everything shifts. The noise fades, the pressure loosens, and in the quiet, you finally feel it. I trust myself now. That is your revolution. That is your rebuild. That is the life you were always meant to live. I build my life on trust, not fear, not performance, not perfection. I return to myself again and again, and that is the home I've been seeking. Chapter 15. You're not broken, you were just programmed. You were never broken. Though the world may have told you otherwise, though you may have spent years trying to fix what was never yours to carry, though you may have looked at your anxiety, your people-pleasing, your overthinking, and said, "What's wrong with me?" There is a softness in realizing the truth. Nothing was ever wrong with you. You were just programmed, taught to believe that peace had to be earned, that love came with conditions, that safety meant silence, and in your innocence, your wisdom, your need to survive, you believed it. You shaped yourself around it. You called it your personality, but it was never you. It was your nervous system doing its job. It was your brilliance in the face of survival, and now you finally get to lay it down. The shame you've carried for not speaking up, for not knowing better, for falling into the same pattern again and again, isn't yours. It belongs to the system that shaped you, not the soul that survived it. You weren't broken, you were coded. And healing doesn't mean erasing that code overnight. It means recognizing it, breathing with it, interrupting it with new truth. The truth that says, you are allowed to be whole even if you were trained to be half. You are allowed to take up space even if they taught you to shrink. You are allowed to feel joy, even if your nervous system still prepares for pain. This isn't about becoming a new person. It's about returning to the version of you that was buried under layers of performance, guilt, and expectation, and whispering, I see you, I remember you, you're safe now. Deprogramming is not a task, it's a way of being, a gentle daily choice to stay awake, to meet your triggers with compassion, not judgment, to hear the old voice, the one that says, don't say that, they might leave. Don't rest. You haven't earned it. Don't trust yourself. What if you're wrong? And respond with presence. That's the program, not me. You begin to separate your patterns from your personhood, and in doing so, you reclaim your life. Not perfectly, not loudly, but consistently, with breath, with boundaries, with softness. Every time you choose alignment over obedience, you rewrite the code. Every time you stay with your body instead of abandoning it, you create safety. Every time you say, I choose me now, you restore the original you, the one who was never broken, just waiting to be remembered. And as the old programming fades, you don't become invulnerable, you become honest. There will still be days you forget, moments you fall into old responses, but you no longer shame yourself for that. You see it, you stay, you repair. That's what healing looks like, not a linear path but a loving one. You no longer need to prove your worth by how healed you are. You just need to keep coming home, again and again, to the truth that you were always worthy, even when you were still surviving. And when you live from that knowing, your life begins to feel lighter. Your breath deepens. Your relationships soften. Your energy steadies. Not because the world has changed, but because you have returned to yourself. So as we close this journey, let this truth settle. You are not broken. You were just programmed. And now you are free to reprogram your life in your own language, in your own rhythm, in your own voice. You are allowed to be slow, to be soft, to be unsure. You are allowed to be whole, even while still healing. There is no final version of you to reach. There is only presence. and in your power is undeniable. You are not late. You are not lost. You are not too much. You are here, and here is enough. Finally, fully, beautifully enough. I am not broken. I was just programmed. I choose to remember who I was before the noise, and I live from that truth now, grounded, whole, and free.